This is the Drake Insights Podcast, your weekly dose of cutting-edge senior living marketing insights. Join me, your host, Natasha Drake, for bold ideas, proven strategies, and inspiring stories straight from the experts. Tune in and let's conquer the senior living marketing landscape together. Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Drake Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Natasha Drake from Drake Strategic. Let's get started. So on today's episode, we're going to dive a little more into the topic of the future of senior living. We know there is an intense wave of boomers aging, all being of age in the next 5 years. And if you listen to the podcast or you saw me at Leading Age, this was a topic that I brought up. We talked a little more in depth and met with everyone asking, what are your top 3 words that come to mind when you think of the future of senior living? And there was some really incredible insights and topics and words that came up, a lot of exciting positive things, about innovation and technology and some new amenities and features and things that are coming out. And that's great. But today I want to talk a little bit about the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? There's some exciting positive things, but I do, want to call a spade a spade. I think it's important that you watch that episode, you see all the things, all the different areas and industries we're talking about. But I also want to talk about that it's not always sunshine and rainbows, to quote Mike Brindley. There are a lot of things that we need to be honest and truly talk about. If you know me, on my show, I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I want this to be honest and real and really just dig into what are the facts, in the next 5 years with the boomers coming. Are we prepared from an operations, infrastructure, services, amenities perspective, as well as sales and marketing? So we're going to talk about all the different topics. How are things changing? What needs to change so we are prepared for this next generation? And before we get into that, I do want to take a moment to introduce my guests today. These two are prior colleagues of mine for the past, I think 15 years it's been.
2000, April 09. This is going on 16.
So we've got Lauren Messmer, the founder and CEO of Solutions Advisors, and Mike Brindley, Chief Sales Officer as well from Solutions Advisors. So welcome both of you. Thank you for joining. I brought them on because, we've worked together, as I've mentioned, for a long time. I think between the three of us, we've seen a lot in terms of the operations side, right? Working directly in a building as well as frontline. You guys are front with the sales teams, and from an agency marketing perspective, kind of seen how things have changed over the years and where it's going. So thank you both for joining. If you can introduce yourself.
Well, I just want to say, I felt if I kept on telling you that you are always one of the smartest people in this industry, you'd eventually invite me to this podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm very happy to be here. And truly, you've always been one of the most smartest, instinctual people in this industry. I'm very excited about what you've done with your company. And I think that's unbelievable to be able to branch out and do something courageous like this. So kudos to you. I don't know, my number 12 years now, Lauren, 12, almost
12 with the company.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So with Solutions Advisors and I oversee the day-to-day for the consulting. And, the one thing I've prided myself on in this career is being able to get in the weeds and get with these communities and work with them individually. So I think hopefully that's what we get out of this is, what are we seeing at the, the ground level and the ground, getting into the weeds versus, 30,000 feet that a lot of, I think, leaders still get stuck in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. Lauren Messmer, President and CEO of Solutions Advisors. And Natasha isn't joking because we worked together at Princeton Windrose and in 2009. And then you worked for our team for many, many, many years. And we worked very closely together. So I love working with you and appreciate, bringing other people in from the industry, getting perspectives, because many brains are so much better than just one, and learning from other people's experiences. I think it's great. So, I really hope today, as Mike said, my goal, and whenever we do a podcast or we do a presentation, is that there are real takeaways that people can bring back to their communities and their lives, and they can implement and, make changes that our ultimate goal as an organization is occupancy, regardless of what the position within the organization is, whether we're generating leads, whether we're cultivating leads, whether we're advancing or converting them, or whether in operations and ensuring things are running appropriately. Our goal is occupancy and all of those things working together. So hopefully that comes across today and we have some good insights for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both so much for being here. Yeah, this is a little bit of a controversial but exciting topic. I think at least me in my time working in the industry for almost 20 years, I've seen a lot of growth, but this is something unprecedented that I don't think we're really quite prepared for in a lot of different ways. So I have some facts that I want to first lay out. If you've been hiding under a rock and you don't know these things, you haven't seen, there's been a lot of podcasts, articles coming out in the past 5 years about this, but just a couple facts here. So 77 million baby boomers will turn age 65 plus by 2030. So in 5 years, we have about 500,000, I hate using the word unit, but unit apartment shortfall by 2030. And every day, 10,000 people in the US turn 65. And by 2030, the demand for senior living will be unprecedented. Every community, every unit, and every new project will be filled to capacity. So everything that's being built right now will be filled by 2030. And so according to NICMAP Vision, to quote their data, the current senior living development pace shows a 550,000 unit shortfall by 2030, a 275 billion investment shortage that will grow to 1 trillion by 2040. So with only 26,000 senior living units being developed annually, the industry is on track to fall, it says 50% short of the required inventory by this year. So I just wanted to share some of those facts that kind of kick us off. So it's not, obviously none of us are making this up. Obviously all of us know of the wave and how large this generation is. But I think it's just helpful to hear those numbers. That was really impactful. I knew the numbers of boomers, but to see all of the shortage of actual, assisted living, independent living, unit apartments in the next 5 years. And so what is being done about it? What can we do about it? As you know, I'm very passionate about it, and I'm really excited to have you guys on to talk about this and how we can make some changes. So let's start with the operations physical plant side, if we can start there and dig in. I mean, I laid down the facts, but what is the truth? What are you seeing in terms of the physical plant, the infrastructure, services, amenities? Where do we want to start and kick this off to talk about how operators and communities aren't prepared for this? What are you seeing on the front lines, and what do they need to do? Who wants to kick us off on this?
Well,
Lauren, why don't you go first, Lauren?
I think we talk about this, Mike and I talk about this a lot, and the industry talks about the silver tsunami, and I kind of get on my high horse about it because I feel like the numbers are there, they are, but you have to balance. Our current customer is still the 80-year-old, the oldest boomer is 78, 79, 80, depending on how what age bracket you use for that. And the silent generation is still our customer for the immediate time. Right. And then we have to be looking ahead for the boomers and what it is that they're looking for. And not just what they're looking for from a physical plant perspective, which, Mike, I'd love for you to talk about that, but also, and services and amenities, but also the idea of sacrifice and giving up, and the perception that moving to a community is a sacrifice for what it is that they currently do. And that's then leading to, I'm not ready yet. When you hear the I'm not ready yet, it's because it's really, I'm not ready to give up. I'm not ready to sacrifice yet. And so how do we not build retirement communities where the vision is I'm sacrificing to get there? And what does that look like? And we work with a couple of communities that they didn't build retirement communities. So but I'll pass that over to Mike if you want to chat about that a little bit.
Yeah. And again, I think that, Lauren kind of hit that head on is this perception of loss by going from their home, their current environment, what they have in terms of their own amenities at their own house, and how they perceive living and thriving in their own house, to coming to a community. Now, my instinct says the real estate part of this, like the apartments in senior housing, has gotten a lot better, especially since post-COVID. Like I feel that when I start seeing some of these renovations in communities just strictly for apartments, like these are going to survive a while. Like the way they look, the feel, like, I think back in the 90s and early 2000s, if they lasted one turn, you're pretty happy. I see a little bit better. I think really we've made really nice apartments for prospects. So in that aspect, I think there's not a lot of loss. I think sometimes prospects go, I've never had quartz before. I've never had stainless steel and things like that. So I think that's exciting. I just spoke at a board retreat 2 weeks ago, and it was one of those where I was on Zoom, but I couldn't see the rest of the room. So it was board members, and then one of the board members was actually a resident. And what I was showing was amenity spaces for the future, what other communities are doing that are outside the box or becoming more of kind of what we expect in communities. Yeah. And that perception, this is what kind of boomers are looking for, or really, involves silent generation types. And I was at the community the following week, and the resident on the board came up to me and said, boy, when you said the best thing we can do is not build retirement communities in these retirement communities, the board's eyes lit up. And then she's like, man, I was excited because I didn't come here to live in a retirement community. And I think that if we can have that mentality going forward, we'll be okay, because boomers don't want to be called seniors. Every study shows that. So we've got to make sure we understand who they are. And Lauren says this all the time, we need to work towards what they want. Like, we need to be in their shoes and what they want, not give them what we expect what they want.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you elaborate on that a little bit? So what do you mean specifically by, just because I want to clarify for the listeners, specifically not building retirement communities? What does that then look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I know people talk about pickleball and things, athletic sports like that, but like, that's real. I mean, it's the fastest growing sport in the United States to older adults.
But what's happening is that communities are retrofitting what they have to build a pickleball court. We have a client who it wasn't even built to standard. So really you can't play pickleball. It has to be purposeful. So, something like that, it has to be purposely built, purposely designed, not just an afterthought that fits in.
Yeah, we've got a couple of communities we work with. I mean, they don't have a fitness center. I mean, they've got absolutely a gym, 3,000 square feet, memberships outside the community.
Yes.
If you were touring the community, if you're an older adult, 82, 78, 82, and you walked in and you saw everybody, there's always something going on. One of the biggest negative aspects of tours, it feels like a ghost town. And we always say, people are working right now. I mean, we come up with something to kind of give an excuse. This community, quote unquote, it's bumping. I mean, there's always something going on. The gym is outstanding. It's a state-of-the-art swimming pool, where high school teams could practice there if they wanted to. That's, to me, the next generation is
with boxing classes, heavy weights, personal training. It's a gym. It's a gym that is an outside membership of $150 a month. It's a gym.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like community, and I think Lauren, you and I spoke about this last time, is community spaces kind of open to the public, where people can come and go. A lot of these boomers, I mean, most of them are working longer, right? And so for them to move into a community, it has to fit that lifestyle. It's a totally different lifestyle. So, talking about, I think you mentioned something like coffee shops were there, you have a
restaurant that has its own marketing, its own Facebook page. It does Uber Eats, it does DoorDash. It's open to the public. There's one of our clients has that, a local realtor did a whole, TikTok where she went there and met her parents there. She's like, this isn't a retirement community, full bar, smoked old fashioned. You're getting these things that are really happening at the community that is what they're used to doing in their communities. And so they don't feel like they have to give up. It's all there for them. I mean, it really is the wellness and all the dimensions of wellness, whether 4, 6, 7 that you kind of work toward, everything is covered within the community. And it doesn't feel like a retirement community.
Yeah.
And the culture there, you feel the culture there that it's not like that. Yeah. It's a culture of wow, this is different. This is unique. I want to be a part of this versus, putting the stop sign up before you get on campus.
And I would think that also, what I have seen too, a lot of the life plan communities that I've been to, they sort of create this cookie cutter model all across the country too. And I think that also needs to change. To your point, we need to meet them where they are, but also dependent upon the region too, where you're living. Because people up in, where I live, close to New York City, just a very different lifestyle than those in Florida, so to speak. So making sure it's not, okay, well, we're creating the same life plan model and this is what it looks like, and these are the fitness center and the 3 restaurants. And I just feel like they're touching on it. They're getting to that concept and that idea. But like you're saying, not fully. And not fully what boomers, what they're looking for and meeting them where they are in the life that they live right now, if I'm saying that correctly. What are your thoughts and on this? And you can tell me if you want me to cut this out. But what are your thoughts on the Margaritaville type concept in Florida? I wanted to get your opinion on that. Because that's another idea, right? There's a few of these, right? Where you've seen these resort style, that kind of concept. And I know that attracts a certain type of person, and maybe it does exist, but is that something that's realistic for this generation? Or I don't know, I just wanted your opinion on that.
Mike, what do you think?
No, I mean,
I'm putting you on the spot.
no. Like I,
I'll
when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, come on. And then I heard boomers talk about it. And
Right.
I thought, well, if they're talking about it, then it must be something we need to pay attention
Right.
to. And, we have a client in the Carolinas that said that Disney's building one very similar to Margaritaville in North Carolina. So, like, I just think that at least they understand what boomers want. Now,
Something different.
and again, they're not building a retirement community. They're building a place where people can go have fun. It's not a medical model. So, I mean, listen, if it fills, then they know what they're doing. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my perspective on that is that's meeting people where they are. Like there are so many people, we're at the age, I'm sorry, but all three of us, even though, Mike is clearly the oldest one, all of us are at the age where our parents have or are considering or looking, or friends' parents, or our parents' friends, and they come to us and ask their advice, and they come to us and they want to know. And so, dealing with this with my parents, it's like, sure, there's a large, newly built, and Mike knows which one, resort style community that's 1,000 units. And then there's the one that's established, not for profit, CCRC, that's been there, that's smaller. But my mom doesn't want the big, like that's not who she is as an individual. She wants a community where she can fit in and meet people easily and not feel lost. So it is also about understanding what people want and having different options for the different desires. So, I mean, I think the Margaritaville thing is great. It's not my thing. The Villages here in Florida, of course, everyone knows the Villages, and they've been around and growing forever. I have family who lives in the Villages part-time, and I have people looking at the Villages who would never move in. So it's just, I'm fine with that, but that's not going to resolve the issue for everybody. Not everyone wants that kind of stimulation. And, the old adage of, cruise ship on land, who wants to live on a cruise ship all day? Like, it's really about growth, purpose, opportunities for people to learn, continue learning, continue thriving. And that is what we've seen, taking up a hobby, the woodworking studio, the art, showcasing, resident art, really things that people are doing at the community and understanding, what is interesting to them. When we were at Princeton Windrose, art was a big thing there. And so focusing on what's important to the residents that live there, and then shifting your marketing and sales approach to address what they're looking for is the most critical thing.
Yeah. And we're kind of touching on this, but I just want to venture over and see if there's any more we want to talk about in terms of the services and amenities specifically, and tying in care and healthcare into that too, because obviously boomers care about care, their healthcare, of course, but it's a different model, right? It's more about, I hate to use successful aging, right? But it's more about wellness and focusing on aging successfully longer. I mean, literally my dad is the healthiest he's ever been than he ever was before right now. I mean, he's really focusing on that, and that's his biggest thing because he doesn't want to go to a community. It's kind of what he says, right? So I'm thinking how he's kind of my model of how and what would I do to attract him, that type of a boomer, because that's a large part of that population. So yeah, what are, in terms of services, it can't be meals, I would assume, right? We have to kind of change some of these concepts of meals and specifically the care focus, and they want to control more of their money, right? And their assets. And I'm curious about that mentality and how that's going to change the model and the structure of the care service amenity models of these communities too.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting question, and I'll probably answer it in a way that is so off, and maybe I'll try to bring it back to it. But, one of the things that I've seen, especially post-pandemic, is even how the silent generation and how they're behaving comparative towards boomers. Like they're very similar in a lot of ways. Some of these younger silents, they've taken on a lot of boomer persona. And so where I'd start is, if we don't understand that they're using smartphones and technology and streaming, I get really nerdy about this, but Only Murders in the Building on the Hulu platform has been the most streamed show on the Hulu original network for the last 4 years. Stars a 77-year-old Steve Martin, a 76-year-old Martin Short. It's directed, produced by them. Nathan Lane's been on it. Shirley MacLaine's been on it. Like, other than Selena Gomez, every main actor is older adult. Okay, 25 and 30-year-olds aren't watching it. It's being carried by older adults. So if we don't understand this concept that they're streaming now and they're using their iPhones and their pads and tablets, like, we will lose. And I know we get it that they do it, but like, that's critical. Like, we go to these communities where they still don't have platforms that are upgraded to what boomers would want, like a Well Zesta and place and things out there like that. Like, if we don't understand that initial concept of how they're performing every day in their life using Instacart and DoorDash and things like that, then we don't get them. And so we'll lose. So I think we have to understand who they are. And we've talked about that. And then that the care side of it, while important, isn't what's going to bring them to the community first.
Right.
And then once they get there and they get comfortable, that's when they ask the questions and say, well, can I see your assisted living? Or if you have skilled nursing, can I see your skilled nursing? And then that's all about, how are you preparing for that and what that looks like and what that feels like? If we don't do that on that visit and just kind of open the door and say, here it is, that's where you're going to lose this customer pretty quickly, because what they see when they go back there is going to be reminding them of what they saw when they placed their parents back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Well, also operationally, I think, when you talk about healthcare in particular, you're not just talking about your external prospects, you're talking about your residents and selling the healthcare. A lot of people are getting rid of their skilled nursing beds, but there's plenty of communities that still have them. But selling assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing to your existing residents through a very structured program with internal marketing is a whole nother. I mean, we work with some clients where we're working really hard on getting their residents to trust the move and the transition. And that's something that I don't know that we talk about enough, because we think, well, we don't want to reflect poorly on operations, but we have to acknowledge this and talk about this in our marketing planning meetings so that we have marketing strategies that are around the existing residents that live at the community. And that's also why we have in our marketing planning sessions, we have our EDs, we have our, programming directors, we have our head nurses, we have people who are not traditionally in marketing, because your marketing to your internal residents is just as important with that.
Yeah, I just talked last week on someone who's going to be on a future podcast about that, about care and how much sales and marketing and the concierge amenities have grown, but how healthcare hasn't really moved that far as concierge amenities. And if we took that same mentality with the care, how much impact we'd have on the residents and the care that they're being provided. So I agree completely. Another question is, do you feel that, and I'm talking true boomers, are filling these buildings, whatever they end up being. Do you feel like the structure of whether it's life plan or independent living, where you're paying that life plan entrance fee, you're paying a monthly fee, you're getting a set number of this for that. Do you think that that's really realistic for this generation? I'm just curious, because most of the boomers I know are very tight control of their assets and their money. And I'm just curious if that structure, if we feel like that type of structure will be able to continue for the next 5-10 years. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
The entrance fee model in particular you're talking about, not necessarily type A or type C or modified.
Right. Just that model of, upfront money, you're controlling it, and for my healthcare. I don't know. I'm just curious if that type of a model will sustain this generation, as well as then your monthly service fees, right? So you then, on top of that, you then have monthly service fees, and what does that include? And we're talking about how they want to have meals when they want them. They want to have restaurants. I feel like they're more of I want to pay for things when and if I need them, not just pay you flat out every month. I mean, this is a generation who, a lot of assets, right? Most of them own their homes, all of these things that I just think, I'm just curious. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. And if we think that this generation will be able to continue and sustain that model, or if it needs a new model structure needs to come about. I don't know. Just something I think about sometimes.
Well, I think number one, a lot of times when you talk about life plan, the counterpart to that is a rental, like monthly rental.
Right.
Because we've been involved in other contracts, that there's also straight equity model. There's a potentially, there's co-op models out there. We have a client that has that. I think so there are other models. I think the number one thing when you're talking about entrance fee versus rental is the reality is the rental communities that are being built are not necessarily substandard with construction and amenities like they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
The rental community used to equate to less. That's for this person who couldn't afford the entrance fee concept, couldn't afford to put the money down, so they went to a rental. That is not the case anymore. It truly is where do I feel right? And then the financial contract is another component of that. And so what we're doing, and you don't see a lot of rental communities adding an entrance fee contract, but we are seeing entrance fee contract communities add rental options for specific units or as a different, with a certain number, sometimes there's restrictions around that. But so do I think it's, totally on the way out? I think the Type C contract is probably more appealing because to your point, they're going to pay for services if and when they need it ever. But some of the rental communities, they also did a huge monthly service fee increases over COVID. And so are they pricing themselves out of that, boomer population?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit most of it. I think, again, it's the model, right? And at the end of the day, whether it's not for profit or for profit, these are businesses and they have to be ran as businesses. So, if you are sticking to just your life care, life plan formula, well, if these people age in place and go to assisted living and memory care and eventually skilled nursing, is your monthly service fees even covering the cost of what labor is going to be down the road and the cost of building these communities? And so, I think the margin there gets really tight, and that's where these Type C fee for services may be a better alternative, not just for the prospect, but for the developer and the operator too. So I think they have to weigh that in. I said this on your Leading Age, snippet podcast. One of my big concerns in the industry has been monthly service fees. If a room was $4,000 or $5,000 4 years ago, and you couldn't sell it then, and now you've added about 15 to 20% worth of, raising fees on top of it. If they didn't like it at 5,000, why are they going to like it at 6,200 or 6,400? So, where I don't think the industry has changed is the market dictates a lot of what people are willing to pay. And so I think sometimes we get a little too aggressive or greedy. And I was listening to a Zoom a couple of weeks ago where if you're 86% occupancy and you feel like you've got great occupancy, don't be stubborn to rate. Like, you've got to be willing to say, does this apartment really generate this type of revenue? And leaving it empty doesn't get you any revenue either. So that would be my biggest concern is like, we've got to be flexible. And I think, I don't think we need to change the industry, but we need to be flexible in how we operate our communities for sure.
Yeah. And I guess that's more of what I mean is I'm curious if this generation, and I'm talking, I guess, more of the younger, I know the boomers are quite a large span, but some of the younger boomers wanting to pay even a monthly service fee for services that they might not need. I can just picture them being like, well, I'm going to want, these are the, more a la carte, I guess, right? These are the types of services I want. And I'm going to pay for my meals when I sit down, when I go to the restaurant. I'm not going to pay you every month. I'm going to pay you when I go, like they do now, right? I have doctors. A lot of them have very specific doctors that they see, and I will not see anyone else. So those are my doctors. And you know what I mean? So it's a little bit different of a more prescriptive of, these are the 3 amenities I'm going to use. These are the services I'm going to use. I'm going to come and go as I please. And, so like you were saying, Lauren, more of that kind of co-op condo concept of an a la carte service and amenities. I don't know.
Well, and unbundling the services, I think, is a fabulous thing to explore, particularly in destination locations where you might have a really transient population. You don't want to turn those units. You want to keep them and offer them the ability to do what, again, they don't have to give up what they're used to doing, the travel, all of that, and having an unbundled service package or an option that gives them the ability to have that choice, I think is absolutely critical. But then at the same time, then there's the other side of that, which is, are we building the right product on the campuses as we're doing expansions? And to your point in the beginning with the stats, expansions have to happen. And is the right product more of an active adult product where there's no services, you have very few FTEs, and then you have discounted memberships to your amazing gym or your restaurants that are open to the public, and there's a discount, but people kind of come in and live within that community, but they're only utilizing it as they would if they didn't live in a retirement community. So it's more age restricted, 55 plus, not having the shared amenity spaces necessarily within that product on the campus, but then they have access to the amenity spaces within the campus. Like, I really think there's a lot there that still needs to be explored. I think active adult is huge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boomers are so purposeful, so intentional. Like, that's why active adult works for them, because they kind of drive what happens every day at that community. There also can be very nomadic. So like, if they want to go to, like, if they live in Philly and want to go to Arizona for 2 years and try it out there, they're willing to do that. And if they don't like it, then they may go somewhere else.
Right.
So like, and to do that, you have to have a price point that works for them.
Right. Is there any more, before we head over to the sales and marketing realm, because I want to talk a little bit about that too, obviously, is there any more in terms of that we want to talk about in terms of operations perspective that we haven't touched upon?
Well, Lauren and we talked about just the importance of culture, and
Yes.
we brought it up earlier, but like, I think this operation sales culture has to be really much in line. And again, it's not like, back in the old days where we said, all right, the executive director, you have to call this lead after they tour, and you show them that, that's our best practice. Like, I mean, that's fine. It still works. But, do they understand? Like, when I do sales workshops, I don't do them just for the sales team anymore. I do them for all of leadership, not because we expect them to sell. We needed them to understand what this culture feels like, not just the process and the steps, but like how it's supposed to feel for the journey for this prospect. And boy, when we do that in communities and it really sticks, then we see like the sparks and magic happen. We can't have this stuff with operation and sales still. I mean, it just doesn't work.
Well, and especially because that kind of takes me into the sales. Let's dive into sales a little bit, because this generation is known for, having a lack of trust, right? And wanting, that honest, transparent, and everyone wants that, of course, but I just think more so, right, that this generation does specifically. And so, yeah, that takes me into, you can't just do ads with stock photography and, just the salesperson pushing and selling and whatever it might be, right? It needs to be very different with this boomer prospect as well as the adult child prospect. They're very different. So I'm just curious from a sales perspective, how, and if you have seen, on the front lines, that changing at all, or how do you anticipate seeing the sales process changing moving forward?
Well, I saw this prior, and I said to Lauren, I mean this, I hope it doesn't change, right? Like, I don't want the process to change, because personally, in our culture, I think we do it really well, and I think we coach it really well. And so I hope it doesn't. Now, have I seen our industry over the last 10 years and really hard the last 5 years talk about relational sales, develop better relationships with prospects? The key is, building a relationship with your prospect, understanding where they are. It's happening. It's great. Now, I think what we don't want is people having like a high school level of that. It's like, how do we teach them to have a bachelorate or a master's, a doctorate of this? And so if we don't understand the boomers are relational, well, again, we're going to lose. So to me, it shouldn't change. It's how do we explore it differently and understand it, and understand the people we're talking to, and coaching salespeople to not go to bad habits that have happened in this industry for 30, 40 years.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think the bottom line is we still have an industry that, as Mike says, relationship building within the sales process is happening. They're building relationships, but we still hear, well, I just need more leads. I just need more leads to work, because it is just a natural thing. This is not an individual thing. It's not a community thing. It is just natural when you're working those leads every day to fall back into the process of working what's right in front of you, and who's ready to raise their hand, and not really digging into a true person-centered approach to sales. It's just easy to do it. The best salespeople and the most effective salespeople I've heard that from, but it needs constant reinforcement, and that approach needs constant reinforcement, and focusing on those KPIs and the activities that actually advance prospects, like planning and spending time in planning, whiteboard planning sessions, creative follow-up, home visit, those things that are driving to advances and really understanding what they are. That's what the sales process is about. But at the same time, then it also ties into expectations matching. So, one of the things that Mike and I have talked about, and we talk about with our team, is one of the biggest indications of a lead advancing through the sales cycle is your repeat tour. So looking at your KPIs, what are your repeat tours? Because at the end of the day, particularly with a life plan entrance fee community, people don't tour once and move in. Right. Multiple visits, sometimes 3, 5, 10, 14.
Yeah.
They have multiple visits. So if you aren't seeing the repeat tours, then identifying what it is and trying to figure out why you're not seeing those repeat tours is super critical. And when you were first asked the question and we were thinking about sales and marketing, what to do, one of the biggest reasons why we see a drop in repeat tours sometimes is that the expectations that the prospect has when they arrive at the community and tour is not the same as the expectation they had when they were at home looking on your website. Yep. So they're reviewing your website. They're trying to understand the most important things I'm looking at. Price, put it on. Photos, put them on. Floor plans, put them on. And so those are the 3 things that people look at. And that's what they want to, they want to know and feel the community. And so if you're seeing people come and then what they see when they tour doesn't match the expectations of what they had to visit, why would they come back? They're not going to. They're going to say, I'm not ready yet because the idea of I have to give up something to move in, and I'm not giving up something right now. I'm not ready to give up something. So, I think
or we oversold them on that first visit and overwhelmed them because we showed them every nook and cranny of the community and showed them things that don't even interest them. And again, these buildings are big and they're not getting smaller. And so you can easily overwhelm a prospect on the first visit when, by the way, they were just trying to learn about you. Like they don't be actively sold to anyway. And so, if you make a decision, next 30 days or 60 days, here's what we can do for you. Like they're going to I say it a lot, but they're going to join the witness protection program because we scared them away because we oversold to them so quickly in the process.
Mm-hmm. I do want to touch on a couple things you both said. So the episode that went out last month about sales specifically, we talked about that and talking about how your message, your tone, your culture, your brand, your essence, right, on your website needs to match the experience they're going to have. And how I have seen many times it's great, I'm sure you've seen, but many times when I'm coming in, I'm like, these aren't even close. No. I come and visit the community and I'm like, this is not what your website is seeing, or vice versa. They have all stock photos on their website and, either it's looks bad on the website or it looks fake, right? And you're not getting that experience. And back to what I said about boomers and trust and transparency and honesty, we need to do that even more than ever right now. And so this concept of, I know that's sort of controversial, is like you were saying, Lauren, are we putting pricing? Are we putting all of our photos? Let's not put all of that. I think now we need to get behind that with this generation specifically. Now, do we have to have everything? Not everything, but it's more of this prospect and their adult child is a digital prospect. They are used to self-sales. Mm-hmm. They want to go on the computer. I mean, you can buy a car yourself now online, they want to be able to self-select. And I understand that takes the relationship a little bit out of it. Obviously, we want them to come in. That's the goal. But we don't want to lose them either off the website because they want to go to another community's website where they can look at all those things. So I think it's a mix between, I know that was something that a lot of times agencies struggled with is how much do I put and what do I put? But today, with the way that this consumer is buying online, right? Everything's automated. They're getting access to whatever they want, when they want it, chatbots, AI. We have to get behind that in the next, now, so that, we are not losing these boomer prospects on our website. And then they come for a visit, like you're saying.
If they can't schedule a tour on your website, they're going to go to somebody else's website and schedule a tour.
Yeah.
On the website, schedule the tour.
No, and we used to say things like, well, if we got a website move-in, like again, prior to the pandemic, we were kind of high-fiving. Now, if you're getting website move-ins, then you got to look at what you're doing. Yeah. And I don't look at not the sales execution part of it, like what is your website portraying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. Okay, let's see. Where do we go from here?
Well,
I only have like a million things I can talk about.
No, Laura's got something that she brought to me the other day that I thought was absolutely so spot on when it comes to just the marketing side of it.
I do want to dig into marketing. So let's
really,
jump to that.
It actually goes back to what our last point was. So Lauren, I think this term you used was really strong too.
Having this opportunity in this forum to kind of, again, give people takeaways that they can go back to their partners, their internal teams, and really ask some questions is when it comes to the website, not just, yes, you've got to do the chatbots, you've got to have AI is here. And so we have to embrace that. And how do we utilize that? And the chatbot, for example, is one version of that, and being able to schedule your tour and being able to do all of that. But at the end of the day, it is still a human, it's a human interaction. And I think what happens a lot of times is that organizations that provide digital marketing services, advertising services, they come up with vanity data that really doesn't mean anything, and it certainly doesn't drive occupancy. So it's just data that doesn't really lead to any actual conversions. And so I've been talking about that a lot with our industry partners who do what we do. We really have to look at the leads that are coming in, the quality of those leads, and ensuring that they're true leads, so that we're not going back to that, well, we need more leads, which is what happens, in that transactional sales approach. So I think what Mike was referring to was kind of this vanity data that truly doesn't drive occupancy. And it causes, particularly if you're an organization that has a sales team and then you have an advertising agency that's working with you, it only causes these headbutting of, I need more leads. And then, well, I got you the conversions, I got you the visits. Whatever happens when it gets to you is your problem, not my problem. And that's a problem, because every single person in the room, on the team, no matter what their role, should be driving to occupancy as a team, not butting heads with each other and fighting. And, that just doesn't lead to occupancy. Like, it just doesn't.
Well, and I think in the same line of that, conversions from your website, I just want to talk about that for a second, because I hear what you're saying, and many of the sales teams I work with too say these aren't qualified. They came in, I emailed them, I called, they never called me back. I do want to touch on the fact that it is a different prospect too than it was before. So I think before, when you would get a website lead, I know when I used to get a website lead, call them, they'd answer right away, or they'd call you the next day. It was that was the way it worked. It is different with technology, the way that people are researching, consumers are looking online, they're going to your website 6 times. Maybe it was an SEO link, maybe it was a paid ad, maybe it was through Facebook Meta, right? They then got to your website 4 or 5 times, right? To get all of this information. Then they're finally converting, right? They put their information in, whatever it might be, but they might not be ready. And so I think a lot of times we hear that's not a qualified lead, even though it converted, but it's important. And this came up on the sales episode we just did, that the sales teams also, and I know you guys work with your sales teams on this, need to be trained and coached and whatever it might be, that this is a different prospect. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not qualified, right? So just that idea of, and I think that's gonna keep not getting worse, but it's gonna keep happening as these younger boomers age and become more self-selecting and technological, digital, right, online. They might not respond right away. They might not want to come in right away. This is a long process and a longer process for them. So I think it's twofold. I agree with you, but I also think we have to remember that it is, just because they didn't call back right away doesn't make it unqualified.
Absolutely.
You're going to get less.
Absolutely. Right. But then the touch points have to be different to them, because then that phone call's not going to get you anywhere. So what are those touch points, whether we put them as a future lead, and then we're using blogs and different ways to continually have touch points with them that way, so that when they are ready, then they self-select back in, they call you. Giving up and just making them lost definitely won't get you where you need to go.
Yeah. I know we're nearing the end of our time. I do want to talk a little bit more about marketing, if we can, in terms of, we've kind of touched on it, and I know, Lauren, you and I spoke about it, but in terms of marketing specifically, the way we market, the messaging, our ads, what we're doing, also, it needs to change, very similar to what we're just talking about in terms of the website and our sales process. How do we see that changing? And I kind of brought it up as one of the things, is being more honest and transparent and real. And we know that for the past 5 years we've been talking about that, but even more so than ever, boomers can see right through those ads and those stock photos, and your branded headline, whatever it might be, that talks about your community, and just being more focused on, PR and social and real, right? Real stories, real testimonials, showing the real people. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that and how you see that changing.
I think you're absolutely right. And it all ties into to your point, the transparency that the boomer expects with their research. Because even if, going back to that true prospect who doesn't raise their hand, it doesn't mean that they're not at home working themselves through the sales process, right? So it doesn't mean that they're not going to get there, eventually. The biggest difference in what we're trying to push out for the upcoming population is to give them the information that they want and to be honest about the information. So we do mystery shopping all the time. I have several fake personas that exist.
Same.
And they're quite entertaining. They all have their own social media pages and maintain them. They're real. They're probably in your CRM right now, right? But it's amazing how many times I inquire through the website and say, here's what I want to know. I want to know your pricing, your contracts, and your floor plans. Well, which, we have over 15 floor plans. Which one would you be interested in? Just send me all of them. Well, we really want to make sure that we customize what it is that we need for you. I'm not ready for that yet. I really just want to understand what is the price, what is the floor plan? And they won't give it to you. Now that's a very old school way of providing information. That is 20 years ago. We don't tour you until, that is a very old way to do things. Why not? Why are we trying to hide? I get it that sometimes the value of what we provide as an organization is not always understood by the prospects that we serve. I totally agree with that. But the access to information, the access to research, the access to your competitors' pricing, your competitors' floor plans that people are giving is going to make you at the bottom of the list for just the sake of a lack of transparency. That's a huge thing. I mean, we used to talk about pricing on the website, and it was, well, let's just do the starting at pricing.
Yes.
Don't get it. Just give them the price. Just give them the pricing.
Yes.
Right.
Because they're gonna get it. And then you talk about value. Let's share articles. Let's try to put out some of that information. Let's do our own stats. Let's do our own data, we know they can find it, especially now with AI generative search. I mean, it's going to pull it maybe from even bad websites. So let's give them that information. Let them figure out that what we're offering is a good value for what you're getting for it. So oh my gosh.
And that is how you connect. That's the bridge between what's happening and what's changed in our industry from a digital perspective and what salespeople are doing. That is the bridge right there. Because if we as salespeople can be transparent, can provide the information that the prospects are looking for without having to require them to reciprocate with all of this information about themselves or come for a tour or whatever it is, they're going to connect with that salesperson stronger. They're going to have inherent trust so that when they're ready to tour, the connection is just going to be so much stronger. Mm-hmm. Like it just is. And at the end of the day, the prospects buy from people they like. It's not the only driving factor. Price is a factor. Amenities are factors. There's many factors involved. But we all have said, I don't care what that product is. I'm not buying it from that person because I don't want to. Yeah. And if we can be transparent with the prospects that are coming in as much as we can, it builds a trust and builds a relationship. And I would say that's kind of one of the biggest things that's changed on the marketing side.
Yeah. And I think too, I was just talking with someone yesterday about PR and social. And I know it's tough because it's not necessarily a quantifiable lead generator, but we know that boomers are most likely going to trust, and most people do, but they specifically trust what they see on the news in an article, right? What they read, something that's not specifically on your website, more so than just what you're saying, right? In your ads and on your website. And so I think even more than ever, that needs to be incorporated as well. And there's a way to do that now with digital PR, right? And the right and wrong way to do those things. But that's another actionable thing that I think we have to remember that, like I was saying, your ads and what you're saying is, in their mind, less trustworthy than what someone else is saying about you. So
I just think I go back to, I got to see Malcolm Gladwell speak a few years ago, and longtime contributor for the New Yorker magazine. And he said that many companies believe in stars because they don't believe in systems. And how many times have we gotten resumes as industry leaders go, look at this resume, like they're amazing, we got to get them, we got to get that superstar, and then they don't work, or they fizzle out, and they may be a star at one community. Why can't that translate to another community? And that's resonated with me, and I still think that's where we're going with this. Like, if we don't believe in systems and how we're putting this together, this process or culture, then we're gonna have a hard time. And we've got to invest in these systems and get them and work. I say this all the time to my team, and Lauren gets tired of hearing me say it, but she repeats it too, is this isn't hard, but this is hard work. And so we've got to be able to put in the hard work and make sure we get better at these systems, so that then when we work with prospects, we actually get them to the finish line, versus kind of hoping that they like it the first time and make a buying decision.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for being on and going through all these things. I think a lot of this stuff that we talked about, I feel like a lot of the listeners today might think, yeah, I'm doing these things, or yeah, of course we know those things. Because I think in the back of your mind, like, yeah, we're doing that stuff. But like you said, actionable takeaway is, are you doing the full depth, and are you putting the work in to really, really focus on this? Okay, yeah, you have a chatbot on your website, but what else, right? What else is keeping your prospects from converting from your website? So just digging in further, I want to see if there was any, I know you guys went through so much. Thank you so much for going through everything, but is there anything else you want to mention as like just an ending key takeaway from today that you want to leave for the listeners?
I would commit to do an honest assessment of your organization in those areas of, number one, leadership and culture within the organization. Walking in the front door for the first time, understanding first impressions, understanding that, like doing, and then understanding a yes culture and what that means, and talking to the residents and talking to the team members to understand if you have a yes culture. Every organization should do an honest assessment of how their culture is, and if it's a true sales culture, and then how to revise it if it is not. And then extending that to the sales and marketing components as well is very critical, but you've got to look at it with fresh eyes, or ask someone from outside of the perspective to come in and assess it, because it's really hard to see these things when you're in it every day. It's impossible to see these things when you're in it every day. I mean, it's just, we do it and we just default to no, or we default to, yeah, we used to do that and it didn't work, so let's do something different. Well, when did you used to do it, and who with? And maybe it works now, so the no culture is just, it's natural, it's normal. And I would just really do an honest assessment of that.
Yeah.
Where salespeople get tired, they won't ask anymore, because they've been told no too many times. And if you ever want to come back to a podcast that's funny about the signs we see in community that create a no culture, we could do that for probably.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah. I just feel like there was not enough like laughing and hilarity. Like, I think this is
sorry, this was so serious.
I know.
Okay, so we'll do another one that's more fun and uplifting. But I do think it's important, because after doing this at Leading Age, it was wonderful, and I've heard some amazing positive things, and I think that's great. But I feel like there was a lot of a little bit on some of those things we have to prepare for. So I did want this to be make people a little more aware and insightful and think about these things. But yeah, there's also some awesome, positive, exciting things that a lot of the communities we work with are doing and looking forward to. And we'll move up from here and, help this industry grow. Was there anything more you wanted to say in terms of the lasting key takeaway before we leave?
No, this is great. And again, we always appreciate the time just with you in general. And I think the messaging that you've been getting out is, I think what you said earlier is really powerful. I know every person, all 8 people who want to watch me, including my mother, watch this podcast, will say that, like, we already do this. But like, to Lauren's point, but like, be introspective. Like, do you really do this all the time? Are we committed to this hard work, or do we go back to some bad habits that this industry's had for a really long time?
Yeah.
Well, occupancy will tell.
Yeah.
So if your occupancy is not stabilized, then you're kind of in denial if you think you're doing this.
Yeah. And be prepared. I really want a place, for my parents, my kids, me, whatever someday. Like, I just want everyone to start to be prepared now. Because every time I talk about this, I hear a lot of, we're not ready yet. We're not there yet. And it's like, we need to be planning now. So that's kind of my impetus and why I'm so passionate about it. So thank you guys both for being on today. This is very heartfelt for me having you both here, and I really appreciate it. Appreciate your insights. And thank you again for watching another episode of the Drake Insights podcast. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye. Real quick, if you enjoyed watching the podcast today, please follow me and subscribe so you're notified for the next podcast. And if you have any questions or want to talk after about anything that Drake Strategic can provide for you, please reach out to me, call me, email me, or visit our website at drakestrategic.com.